Hey, hey.
What's up?
Welcome to another week of Case File.
With Kat.
And Ashley.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of like spaced out there listening to the music. I was just jamming out over here. Forgot what we was doing.
What are we doing?
What is a good
So what's up?
question?
What's up, Birdie? Like,
So let me tell you how this week has gone.
oh my God.
Okay, first of all, I have to restart my computer.
Yay.
Yay. Secondly, so I changed the turn signal, like light bulb in my car. Easy peasy, right? No problems. Then I got a coffee maker and trying to figure out how the fuck to brew coffee properly without using K-cups. I messaged my brother. I was like, what do? I need an adult. Like, I'm trying to make, like, one pot was too watery. One was, I don't even know what that flavor was. Like, it was so crazy. And my brother's like, it's just coffee. Like, and I'm like, yeah, but I've always used K-cups. Okay, man, I'm trying to, like...
People used to just boil the water and shit.
I know.
You can figure it out.
I'm older than Google, and I cannot figure out how to work a fucking coffee pot. Like, how much coffee do I put in this pot? Anyways, I did figure it out, guys, in case you were concerned.
I was.
I did figure it out, so I can make coffee now. That's how my week started. And then I will say, I messaged the person that won our artwork. Remember, we had that thing for...
Yeah.
And so they left us a review on Spotify. And so I messaged them today because, you know, I'm super timely with things. And that was like a Halloween Halloween contest.
Oh my God, it was that long ago.
I know. But
Sorry.
I just messaged today and they were like, oh, my kids will love it. Like, they can't wait to put it up on the wall and stuff. So I was really happy.
Yay. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for leaving us a review. They left us a 5-star review on...
Oh, you're amazing.
Spotify. Okay.
All right. Did your computer restart?
Yeah, it did. I'm pulling the document back up.
She's...
Sorry, guys. It's been a week. How's your week? What are you drinking over there?
Oh, God. Beer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I don't know what I'm drinking. There's just random liquids.
Oh. Can I tell them what you're drinking first? Well, one of them is that Blue Chair rum, the pina colada.
Delicious.
And then I gave her a rum chata eggnog.
So if this story doesn't make any sense when you listen to it, it is what it is.
I'm not really sure what it tastes like, but I just
the
like
story?
Rum and eggnog.
But
it's horchata. It's horchata rum. I don't know. Seems weird.
It's delicious, is what I can tell you.
It's delicious.
I'm just saying, I don't know if the story will make sense when we're done.
Okay, because you're gonna be drunk. Okay. There you go.
I was trying to pull up the Facebook so I don't butcher this name. I'm really, really, really sorry if I say your name wrong. It's a listener, and it's Betsvara. So if I said your name wrong, I'm really, really sorry. But thank you for leaving a review. I got the address. They listen from Ohio.
OHIO.
They sent their address to us, right? I was like, can I have your address? Listen to it. They just messaged, writing my address feels like I just broke 3 rules on that don't get murdered list. So
that's funny.
Anyways, you could have called her. We're not gonna murder you. You're gonna get some artwork, I promise. So speaking of murder, that's what my story's about.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't do a disappearance. It's like flippy floppy, because you did that. So anyways, so many of you may be aware of the Scream franchise. There's like 7 of them now.
Yes.
But did you know it was based on real events? What? Or it was inspired by real events?
I was going to say, what?
Well, I didn't know.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know. I was watching like Forensics Files or something. It was on a random true crime channel, and as one does on Thanksgiving, and I did. I know, that's as one does, and I just happened to like look over, and they were talking about this killer, and I didn't originally hear the name, and then they're like, he was the inspiration for Scream, and I was like, what? So anyways,
I know this
if you're unfamiliar with Scream, the first movie came out in 1996. I was 10. It was a slash. I just had to throw that in there.
I'm just throwing the bird over
so
there.
there's a documentary called Lights, Camera, Murder, Scream. It's on Tubi, and it talks about the movie. It talks about the serial killer. It's really, really good. It's free, so I would recommend watching it if you're interested.
Yeah.
So tonight I'm going to be talking about Danny Harold Rolling. Sometimes I refer to him as Daniel, sometimes just Rolling, but anytime it's the same guy. It's Danny. And he was also known as the Gainsville Ripper. I will say when I was typing this, it kept autocorrecting to rapper. And I had to consciously go back and check. Because I was like, I'm just going to say rapper the whole freaking episode. And people were really confused. Anyways, Gainsville Ripper.
Rapper. Now we're all just going to hear rapper.
I know. I kept rereading, I was reading through and making sure all my stuff made sense, and I kept seeing it had been autocorrected to rapper. I was like, damn it. So, anyways, Danny lived an unhappy life. He was a tortured soul since birth, and he passed on this abuse to his victims. So I'm just going to discuss a little bit about his background, and then get into what he was eventually convicted for and what inspired the movies.
Okay.
So like many serial killers, he was abused, he was neglected, he had really effed up parents. More so his father. His mother wasn't really abusive, but she didn't really help the situation, if you know what I mean.
And that's abuse.
So honestly, I feel like he's one of those didn't stand a chance characters. That's not an excuse for what he did, but he experienced so much abuse and so much neglect from his father. It would have been really hard for him to not have ended up in some sort of life of like doing crime. He was set up for it.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not excusing what he did. I'm just saying the things that his father did were pretty messed up.
It surprises me that I didn't turn out like that. Oh gosh, I didn't end up in jail.
Well, there's still time.
It's
only 7:13 at night. Danny Rolling was born on May 26, 1954 in Shreveport, Louisiana. His parents were James and Claudia. James had married Claudia when she was 19, and she became pregnant with Danny 2 weeks later. And this disgusted James. He was not happy. He did not want her to have this child.
What?
But she did. James was a decorated Korean War veteran who may have suffered some combination of post-traumatic stress disorder, inherent mental illness. He was not right. And so he was a Shreveport police officer when Danny was born and would often tell Danny that he was unwanted from birth.
Oh my gosh.
James also abused and beat Danny's mother Claudia, and his younger brother Kevin for frivolous things such as breathing in a way that displeased him. In one incident, Danny's mother went to the hospital after claiming her husband tried to make her cut herself with a razor blade. He was trying to get her to cut her own wrist. She made repeated attempts to leave her husband, but always returned shortly thereafter. In one example of James's sense of discipline, he pinned Danny to the ground and handcuffed him, and then had the police take him away because he was embarrassed by him. And we're talking about an 8 or 9 year old. The police came, forcefully pinned him down, and arrested him, and took him off he was going to go to jail. In another,
hold on, that deserves a Kevin. I'm sorry.
We'll just keep the Kevin button going. In another story, Danny had a dog, but James beat the dog so often and so badly that it ended up dying in Danny's arms. Danny would recall these early years as a time when he developed multiple personalities as a defense from the nightmarish reality around him.
Gosh.
He attempted suicide several times but failed. And I didn't put in all of the abuse that he got from James because this just really messed up. Pretty much the whole time he was alive with James, he would mentally abuse him, physically abuse him, just constantly remind him he was not wanted. He didn't want him there. He wished that Danny was never born. And so he took most of the abuse over his brother and his mom. He got most of it. So Anyways, in 1971, to kind of get away from this situation, he joined the Air Force, but was kicked out in 1972. He was drinking heavily, smoking weed, he was doing LSD. So he actually ended up getting busted for drug possession in the Air Force, and that's why he was kicked out. So Danny went to live with his grandfather, and for a time, he found some stability through his church. He ended up marrying a woman named Omather Helko. She was 19 years old.
What an interesting name.
I know. I looked that up to make sure that was, the actual first name, and that Omather was definitely the name. So anyway, she was 19 years old when they got married, and on September 6, 1974, she was 19 and they got married on September 6, 1974. They had a daughter named Kylie Rowling, but eventually all of Danny's drinking and drug usage, it just kind of started to spiral, and he was now inflicting the abuse that he received as a child onto his wife. And so she actually did leave. She took the daughter and divorced him and got herself out of the situation because she just didn't want to deal with it.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. And he was not happy about this. He went off the deep end when she left. He had so much resentment and so much hate, and he just could not believe that she would leave and take his daughter from him. So it just really messed him up. He started drinking more heavily, started doing more drugs. He was already harboring a habit for voyeurism and plagued by like these really messed up visions. He took a turn for the worse after the divorce. He ended up raping a woman who resembled his ex-wife and embarked on several armed robberies throughout the South, and that led to his incarceration in Jackson, Georgia in 1979. So he was in jail for a very brief time for that, and then in the 1980s, when he was released, he brought more or less of the same behavior, drinking, doing drugs, moving around, just in general being a hoodlum, right? Like just robbing, stealing, doing drugs, drinking, just that kind of crap. Anyways, he was in and out of jail in Alabama and Mississippi for armed robbery. His time in between stints in jail were spent traveling the country, stealing, and forcing himself on random women. So,
how old was he by this point?
By that point, like 19, 20, somewhere around there. He wasn't very old at this point. So back in Shreveport in November of 1989, Danny was fired from his job at a restaurant. That same night, he broke into a home to murder 24-year-old Julie Grissom, her 8-year-old nephew Sean, and her 55-year-old father Tom. Basically, he was saying he couldn't stand to see this happy family. He had been watching them, and he just said they were just too happy. I just couldn't stand seeing a happy family.
Wow.
So that was literally the only reason he attacked them. So Julie was found with bite marks, and her body was arranged with her legs spread on the bed, but the two men hadn't been, like, there was nothing special about it. He just left their bodies. So that following May, Danny got into one final argument with his father. This time he pulled out a gun and shot James in the stomach and the head. However, his father survived, but ended up losing the use of his eye and one of his ears. So at this point, James leaves. Like, after he shot his father, he thought he killed his father, so he immediately left, and he fled. He went to Kansas, he went to Florida, and then he ended up in Gainesville. Like, that's where he ended up at. But that was due to him shooting his father, thinking he killed him. He wished he had killed him. And that's the last that I really heard about it. I tried to look up, like, what happened to his father after that. Like, did he press charges? Did he live? Like, I mean, he survived that, but, like, how long is he alive? Yeah. Whatever. Couldn't find anything else about him. So, anyways, it would be 3 months later from that date, from that fight with his dad where he shot him, that his actual crime spree that would get him the name, the Gainesville Ripper, and be the inspiration for Scream. Like, that's when it started. So Daniel was 6'2". He spent time in the military. He would follow his victims home and break in and then overpower them. I mean, he was a big guy. He was strong. He was tall. And then he would cover his tracks using information he had learned from his father, who had been a policeman.
Oh, no.
So when he would do these crime scenes, he would clean up after himself. He would wear gloves. He knew the chemicals to use. Wow. He knew all of this stuff about crime scenes.
Oh, no. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, like he knew all of this stuff that he had been listening to his father and like reading and all. And so he just knew what to do. So he didn't leave hair behind. He was very careful. He was very careful about fingerprints. Like I said, he wore gloves. He would clean the crime scene down. He never parked near the crime scene. Like, he was just super careful. He left no evidence at any of the killings.
He was like a true crime fan.
Yeah.
For the wrong reason.
Yeah. So, his rampage started on Friday, August 24th, 1990. He broke into a Florida apartment in the middle of the night where two young college students were sleeping. He found one named Christina Powell on the living room couch who was asleep. He watched her, but he didn't attack her. Instead, he moved upstairs and found Sandra Larson asleep in her bed. He woke her up, taped her mouth shut so that Christina would not hear, and then stabbed her to death. He then moved back downstairs, sexually assaulted Christina, and then killed her as well. He posed their bodies for the police to find, and then he took a shower in their bathroom before he left. Like, he was cleaning stuff off of him. Like I said, he didn't want any evidence to come back with him. And
what about body hair?
There was none.
He shaved?
I guess. There was no evidence. He did not leave evidence
They didn't go into the drain. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, you lose hair.
I don't know how there wasn't evidence
taken
on the body
at all.
Because it didn't mention him wearing, like,
a condom.
But anyways, there was no evidence. They said he
was a non-secretor.
He was so good at cleaning up because he had learned so much from his piece of shit father. So anyways, the next night, Saturday, August 25th, this time he entered the home of Christina Hoyt. What made this case more creepy, according to investigators, was that Krista actually wasn't home. So he broke in and he literally just waited in the dark alone until she showed up, and like the next morning. So he waited overnight for her to get home. When she arrived, he bound and assaulted her. He stabbed her to death. He posed her body like he did with the other ones, but this time he cut off her head and put it on like a mantle. And he would later testify it's because she looked most like his ex-wife.
Oh my God.
So she was the most, out of all of his victims, she was the most brutally treated. He stabbed her, he raped her, he cut her head off, he posed her. Like it was the crime scene was gruesome. And that's what he said. He said, she just reminded me too much of my ex-wife.
BTK would wait.
Yeah. So after the weekend of horror, citizens were in shock, right? Like, they were scared to leave, especially women, especially on the campus. All of these people were pretty much college students or right around the college. A lot of people said the crimes reminded many of them of Ted Bundy, who had killed several Florida college students in 1978. But Danny was not done, because just 2 days later, he broke into another apartment. So he first made his way to the bedroom of Manny Tabodeau, and he murdered him. And this would be the first time in any of his sprees that he attacked a man. So his roommate was a woman named Tracy Pauls, and she was in another room. When she heard Manny trying to fight back against Danny, she went to the bedroom where she too was attacked. She was briefly able to get away to her bedroom and lock it, but Danny broke through and stabbed her to death. Just as with the other females, he posed her, but did nothing with Manny.
But, like, he didn't have sex with her?
He just killed her.
Wow. How were they being posed?
Just like, some of them had their legs spread. Some of them, he would just set them up. Like, he just posed them so that they were the first, like, and then the male bodies were just kind of pushed aside. Like, Manny's body was just pushed aside, and then earlier the man and the child, they were just kind of like killed wherever and just died there. But then the women that he killed after he would stab them, he would set them up, or he would spread their legs or whatever, just to make some kind of statement that made it clear that the female was the victim. That was his whole goal, was he didn't want the police to mistake that the male was the intended target. He wanted everyone to be clear the intended target was the female. So he wanted her to be front and center. So he would always pose them. Because of the crime scene, just how it wasn't that he left evidence behind, but it just seemed sloppy for him. It showed that he was not expecting Manny to be there. He thought he was going to run into 2 female students. So anyways, with the exception of Manny, which was the man, all of the victims were petite, white, and brunette with brown eyes, which was just like his mother. So all of the women that he killed were very similar looking to his mother. And I'll post pictures and stuff on our Facebook, but yeah.
What about the wife one?
The wife one, it just so happened that he saw her and that reminded him of his ex-wife. And so
she wasn't also small, petite, brunette?
She was, but she didn't look so much like his mom. She looked like his ex-wife. Okay. And that just angered him because the divorce was so recent in his mind. So she's the only one that he like dismembered. No one else was dismembered. So after the killing of Manny and Tracy, Rolling would stop and he went inactive for some months. He could have stayed that way for the rest of his life and no one would have known who did the killings. He would have gotten away with it. But he couldn't just stop. He had to continue. And his past would actually lead to his downfall. It turned out that the 5 Florida college students were not his first victims. As I mentioned earlier, he killed that family in 1989. And that was like just 6 months before he started these killings. So as with Manny and Tracy, again, he left the bodies untouched, but he had posed Judy, which was the woman in the family. So investigators noticed that there were similarities between the 2 murder sprees, the killing of the family and then these college women, because all of the women were posed and Judy was posed, and then the male's victims were untouched, same thing. So they believed that it would be the same person, and with that first crime scene, he actually messed up and had left some of his blood behind. So that was a mistake that he made with that. So the fact that he had the same, like he was posing these women, was really his downfall because they knew that it was related. So they knew that he had the type B blood, but the clues stopped there. So Danny had made the fatal error that so many killers do, right? He was arrogant. He wanted people to know that he was responsible. He could not shut up about it. So while in Shreveport, a Christian couple named Cindy, I'm going to mess this up, Cindy Jurok, I butchered it, and Steve Dobbin befriended Daniel at their church. They even invited him to their home several times, but quickly discovered that he was a demented mind, that's their quote, and they needed to get away from him. So in an ABC News interview in 2021, Cindy recounted her friendship with Daniel, saying he'd come over every night for a while, and then one night Steve came in and he goes, "He's got to go." Danny had told Steve that he had a problem, and when Steve asked what he meant by that, Danny looked at him and said, "I like to stick knives into people." Yeah.
Hi. Oh, you can stay as long as you want.
I'll be right back.
Just make yourself at home.
Don't, if you hear the doors locking, don't worry about it. The Shreveport murders had already happened by this time, but Cindy dismissed his comments like, "Oh, he's just crazy. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about." Like, she didn't know about the murders because this was in a different place. He had moved and he was a church member, and she just didn't think she thought he was just crazy, right? Like these were just thoughts he was having. So she didn't think he was serious. So, however, when the news went out nationwide, the investigators had suspected both crimes to be an act of the same man, and the Florida location made Cindy remember something else about Danny that she couldn't let go of. He always told us, one day I'm going to leave this town and I'm going to go where the girls are beautiful and I can just lay in the sun and watch beautiful women all day. Cindy went on to say she called Crime Stoppers and told them, hey man, I think there's this one guy y'all need to investigate, Danny Rolling. So can I just say good for her? Like she saw something awesome. And she said something.
Yeah, I mean, her little intuition was going, spidey sense.
So her call came just in time because not only would this affect others from becoming potential victims, it also saved the life of a Florida man named Edward Lewis Humphrey. He had been arrested for beating his grandmother and was being looked at as the number one suspect for the Gainesville murders.
Why? That's crazy.
Beat a woman.
Okay, I guess.
So they thought that when he was arrested, for whatever reason, they thought that he was they actually charged him with the Gainesville's murders.
Oh my God.
And he hadn't gone to court yet, but he had been suspected. And so later he would be cleared when they arrested and found Danny Rawlings, but some still thought that maybe he was an accomplice of Danny, even though Danny made it very clear he was the only one to get credit. Like he didn't want anyone else to get credit. And there was nothing that said there was an accomplice, because there was one survivor, that he, early in his early years, that he robbed, but he was wearing a mask. But she was like, no, he was alone. And there was never any evidence. They're like, there's no way two people could not have left evidence. You know what I mean? Like, it was definitely one person.
They took a shower together.
Yeah. Anyways, investigators didn't have much to find on Danny. Because again, the evidence other than the type B blood, and they didn't have to do much to find him because he was in jail. Actually, when they got the call about Danny, he was in a jail where he had been since robbing a grocery store months earlier, just a week and a half after the last murders. So once Florida investigators realized that Danny had multiple convictions for armed robbery, they realized that he could have also been responsible for the bank robbery that occurred on that day, that Krista Hoyt's body was found, because the bank that was robbed was blocks away from her house. So basically he went and did a murder, and then he went and robbed a bank. All in a day's work. So they returned to the evidence locker where they had the box of evidence from the murder, from Krista's murder, and there was a gun, a screwdriver, cassette player had been stored, and there were some tapes in it, right? And so they also found tools matching marks left at the murder scenes, and then they came upon a small camp where Danny had been living in a wooded area near the apartment complexes frequented by students. And investigators discovered more audio diaries here that he had made that alluded to the crime. So
he made audio diaries?
Yes.
Wow.
So there was dorms, right? Apartment dorms where college students lived. And there was a tiny little wooded area. He had a tent. He had a clothesline. I mean, he wasn't super nonchalant. You know what I mean? It was very, you could see him. It wasn't like he was in camo gear and hiding. But he had this tent, and he had little campsite, and on it he would sing, and he would make diaries and basically just talk to himself and watch people. But anyways, he made these audio diaries.
That's crazy. That's bonkers.
So in that forensics show I was watching, it's called F2 Forensic Factor, and it's season 2, episode 4. It's called Killing Spree. They played the diaries. So you can go and you can listen to the full diaries. I'm sure they have them on YouTube somewhere, but the whole episode's really interesting. But yes, they played the full audio tape. So again, it's Forensic Files, but the actual name is F2 Forensic Factor. It's season 2, episode 4, Killing Spree. That's just the name, Killing Spree.
Okay.
But yes, so it would later be described in court documents as tape recordings to his family. The audio diaries contain the killer's apologies to his mother, his father, and brother, as well as 11 songs about heartbreak and outlaws.
That he wrote?
That he wrote some of them, and then some of them were covers of other songs.
Wow.
But throughout it all, like through the diaries, through his court case, he would say, psychiatrists would say, oh, it's his father or whatever. But then Danny would still talk about how much he loved his father. And so he apologizes a lot to his father in the audio tapes for not being what his father wanted him to be.
Oh.
So,
oh man, that sucks.
So the tapes also contain plans for the murders.
Sure. You felt sorry for him for a second.
Yeah. So, in one recording, it said, "You're a killer, a drifter gone insane. You're a rebel no one can tame." The song was titled Mystery Rider, and it can be heard in the tapes on that episode. It can be heard, and there's another docuseries called Mark of a Killer. But yeah, he would just sing into the tapes. He had a little guitar that he would play out there and just record himself singing, playing the guitar, and apologies. So another tape had, "I don't even understand myself half the time, but I know that there was some good in me, and perhaps there is still a little, because my heart can still be touched. Perhaps there's some hope in that." So Rowling recorded.
Wow.
Yeah, so he recorded that and some songs on August 4th, 1990, only days before he murdered the 5 students.
Oh, nope. Well, that answers that question.
One of the tapes, and I don't know if I put this in here, but one of the tapes also said, like, the last little bit he recorded was like, "Well, it's time for me to go. I have some things to do." And that was like the day he started murdering. So he was basically alluding that he had some murders to go do.
Like, I had some things to do.
He was like so nonchalant about it on the tape. He's like, "Well, I guess it's time for me to go. I have some things to do." So,
wow.
Anyways, Rowling recorded the songs on August 4th, 1990, only days before he murdered the 5 students. At the time, he was now on the run from the police after attempting to kill his father. Like, his father ended up trying to press charges against him. So later it was discovered that on August 5th, 1990, Danny broke into the home of Janet Frake in Sarasota, Florida. He bound and gagged her with duct tape while he sexually assaulted her, but he did not kill her. Danny was arrested and put on trial. They ended up linking him, they had evidence. They linked him to the crime scene because he didn't kill Janet. And then they linked the family that was murdered to the other crime scenes, and they did a blood test while he was in jail. He was type B. So so Danny was arrested and put on trial. His trial for the student murders began on February 15th, 1994. It was expected to last 6 weeks and include information from nearly 7,000 task force reports, totaling 100,000 pages.
Wow.
So when they realized he was the one, they had so much evidence between the robberies, the rapes, the killings, the break-in, like the home invasion stuff, like the killing of the family. Like, they just had so much on him at this point. The diaries, the campsite. They had murder weapons now. So instead, though, on the first day, he just flat out admitted he's like, "I did it." He said, "Your Honor, I've been running from one problem he said, "Your Honor, I've been running from one problem and into another all of my life. But there are some things you just can't run from, and this is one of those." So he tried to confess and say he was guilty, but the judge said a jury still had to be seated for the trial's penalty phase. So the defense argued mitigating factors in an effort to stave off the death penalty. Psychiatrist Dr. Robert testified during the trial that Danny believed he had an alternate personality named Gemini, who was responsible for the murders. Danny had seen the movie The Exorcist 3 shortly before the murders, and in the movie there's an evil spirit by the same name, and it was to be that Gemini was blamed for the murders and other violent crimes. So basically he saw the movie and then tried to say that his other personality was also Gemini. And so 2 other psychiatrists also testified that he had a severe personality disorder, but stated that their belief was that Danny understood the magnitude of his crimes, especially since he confessed it on tape before committing the crimes. The jury unanimously found Danny guilty of first-degree murder on all 5 accounts, and that was in March, and then a month later he was sentenced to death. So Claudia Rowling, which was Danny's mother, would testify for her son. When they asked her,
wow, she did.
She said she basically said that he was who he was because of his father.
And her, come on, dude.
Well, they asked her, well, if his father was so violent and so abusive to him, because a lot of people didn't believe that his father was abusive, because his ex-wife got on stand and said, well, he never told me about his father being abusive. He never said his father was abusive. He said he loved his father. He never mentioned it. But his mother got on the stand, and when they asked,
both things can be true.
Yeah. Well, when they asked her, why didn't you leave if he was so violent, she said because it would have driven him off the deep end, and she was afraid he would murder her and her children.
Yeah.
And so,
but she has to accept some responsibility
right.
for that, you know.
But she was there to say, you know, he was born this way. Basically, his father made him this way. But from a legal perspective, they had what they needed. Between Danny's confession, there had been taken away any doubt that he was innocent in any way.
Yeah.
So the judge said, if we have the death penalty, and we do, then if this case doesn't meet that criteria for it, I'd hate to see the one that did.
Wow.
And so the jury recommended 5 death sentences for Daniel. He sat on death row for more than a decade, which really frustrated the family members of the families. They wanted it. There was no forgiveness.
Right. Was he appealing?
He did appeal a couple of times. Obviously, they got denied every single time. So he had exhausted all of them. So he was sitting on death row, but he did. So one quote said, I'd like to refer to Danny Rowling in the same tense as my brother, the past tense. Mario Tabado of Miami said in 2005. So he was Manny's brother. And then Krista Hoyt's stepmother said, I'm a nurse, and I've seen my patients die, and they died a much more horrific death than what this man suffered through, that's for sure. He relaxed, went to sleep, and did not feel anything. Today's been a very surreal day for me. It's like a dream, walking through a dream.
Wow.
So the victims were there, like the victims' families. They wanted him to die. Like I said, there was none of this, oh, I forgive them for what they did. I hope they've changed their way and found Jesus and whatever else. Like, no, they all wanted him to die, a very painful death, which is understandable. In an interview with the Associated Press, Danny reflected on his upcoming execution. He said,
impending.
Yeah, but I have. Anyways,
okay.
I do deserve to die, but do I want to die? No, I want to live. Life is difficult to give up. So then on August 25th, 2006, Danny was executed by lethal injection, he was singing a hymn in the final minutes of his life. Like he was looking directly at the family members singing. He was 52 at the time. A total of 47 people witnessed the execution, which is double the capacity of the viewing room.
Oh, wow.
It was the most high-profile execution in Florida since Ted Bundy's execution in 1989.
Wow.
So before dying, he gave a pastor a written note confessing to the 1989 triple murder of Julie Grissom, her nephew Sean, and Julie's father William, who went by Tom. So he hadn't actually been charged for that. He had been charged for the 5 murders, but he just wanted to confess to that as well. Like he wanted the credit. So he gave them that note. Yeah. Investigators were 100% sure already that he was the one that did it. And honestly, they advised that he'd die much faster in Florida. And that's why I said, well, leave him there. So the reason they didn't press the charges for the families, they didn't want to extradite him somewhere else where he may not have gotten the death penalty and been executed. They wanted him to stay and get the lethal injection in Florida, and there's like apparently a super highway for that, I guess, back then. So that's why they did not charge him for the family, and him confessing to it was basically pointless because they already knew he did it. He just wasn't getting charged for it. So for the family members of the Gainesville victims, it was another moment in a very heartbreaking story. I wanted to be there in the front row if I could. I knew until he was gone, I couldn't really start my life again and be me. That was another family member of one of the victims. The families who had loved ones who were murdered by him say that they are grateful for the simple memorial that was put up for the victims. There's a stretch of road running through the city. There's a graffiti covered wall. It has a piece of art on it. It's been unchanged for more than 30 years. The section where the mural is, it has the names of all 5 victims, and it has in remembrance of. It has all of their names. And the family members say it's a place for all of us families to go and see their children's names still living there. The stepmother of Krista said. Manny's brother said they're gone, but their memory has to always endure. In a way, talking about Manny, as I do sometimes with those who knew him, they're kind of alive for that moment, and so it's comforting. And so the mural is there. It's really pretty. I've got a picture of it that I'll post. And in 1994, as the trial for Danny was underway, ABC aired all of this, of course, and Kevin Williamson, the screenwriter of Scream, was watching. And while the screenplay he wrote was not about the Gainesville Ripper, it was about the fear that he said he felt the night he heard about him. So Williamson used that case and Danny's behavior and the college, stalking the college students and stuff, to create a screenplay for a horror movie which revolved around the murder of college students and the media frenzy that ensued. So he said that case. Yes, Socks, I know. Is that Socks? Or?
Yeah, it's both of them are talking to one another.
They're like, do you hear this crazy bitch?
They're under the table, both of them.
They're having their own podcast right now. We're interrupting their podcast. Anyways, so he used the case and the media, all the media that was around the case, and all of that fear of he said, even as not being a female, he was afraid because this maniac was out just breaking into people's homes and killing them, and rapidly, every night of the week, and there didn't seem to be any evidence or suspects or anything, and so that's what inspired him to write Scream.
Wow, that's awesome.
And that's my story. Danny's dead. They didn't talk anymore about his mother. They didn't really say anything about his ex-wife or his daughter. I tried to find information about them, and they're just... After the trial, you don't hear anything else about them. And so I don't have any updates about any of them. But the mural is still there in Gainesville. People can still visit it. So.
Wow, that's a good story.
Yeah.
Yay.
Super good story.
I don't know what I'm talking about next week. Yay. But thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes.
We know the holidays are coming up, so we'll probably skip a week or two in there, because of the holidays.
Because it's us.
Because it's the holidays. The kids. But we hope that after next week would be our last one. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't even know what day it is today. So that's how I am. That's how my week's going.
Next week
could be. Is it the 14th? What day is
next week? We would be recording on the 12th.
Okay.
And the following week would be the 19th.
Oh no, I'm okay. We're good. We're good then. We're good.
We may or may not be here, guys. Who knows?
We're good.
Your guess is as good as ours.
I know. Right now, it's been that kind of day and that kind of week. Anyway, we will see you guys next week. Thank you for listening. If you have not already, please make sure to follow us. We're on, the things. And like us, share us, please.
You can leave us voicemails on our website.
Oh yeah, and you can do that too. Have you checked?
We haven't had any.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say
Sarah has stopped since she's taken or trying to take my position.
She's tried to usurp you. All right, everybody, we will see you next week.
Bye.